Well, hello everyone, it's John Lockland here. I'm the Director of Forum for Democracy International. We've got a crowded field this week. We're meeting to discuss the CPAC conference that was held in Budapest last weekend, Conservative Political Action Committee. And I'm joined for that, I'm in Paris today by Jim Ferguson, who joins us as far as I know from Britain, Marco van den Boomgaard from Forum for Democracy International, who's in The Hague, George Samueli, Budapest, and my co-host Jeremy Nell in Cape Town and Peter Lavelle in Moscow. And we'll be joined shortly also, we hope, by Lionel from New York. Jim, I wanted to go to you first. The CPAC event was a huge jamboree. It brought together a number of leading figures in Europe. It's largely managed, as we know, by the ruling party in Hungary. And Viktor Orban managed to bring the Slovak Prime Minister, Alice Weidel, the leader of the AfD, and so on. And you yourself played a big role in it. I saw lots of videos you recorded. And I want to come on to the heart of the matter and talk about conservatism, Trump and patriotism in a minute. But perhaps before we go to that, you could tell us about yourself and about your Freedom Train International.
Yes, well, thank you very much indeed. It's absolutely wonderful to be here with such esteemed company. I'm looking forward to this conversation. The CPAC Hungary was truly remarkable. The title was The Age of Patriots. And that I found to be very, very on point with the whole theme of it. Yes, it was a great event. Freedom Train International is the largest, fastest growing freedom movement in the world today. I modeled it on the Tea Party movement in America, although it's not so much political, but it is about identifying what the globalists are doing, how we fight back, how we push back, and uniting patriots all around the world. That is our primary mission. My background is in business. I used to buy and sell companies. I own a farm. I have a lot of different interests, but uniting patriots around the world is my primary focus, and it was wonderful to be at CPAC.
Yeah, and the patriotism clearly goes way beyond conservatism, because Robert Fico, I mentioned it just now, the Slovak Prime Minister, addressed the conference. He was very warmly received. He's been very courageous on a number of issues. Rather surprising, really, from Slovakia, in the sense that it's not a big country and it doesn't have a very big history. But in the last decades, there have been two really remarkable Slovak prime ministers. But he's a man of the left, Robert Fico. He's not a man of the right. So is he a conservative? Is CPAC conservative? Or does patriotism go beyond conservatism, Jim?
It absolutely goes beyond that. And I can give you a very real example of that. When I was a parliamentary candidate with Nigel Farage in the Brexit Party, I had been a former Conservative parliamentary operative as well. But when I joined Brexit, I suddenly found that about 45% of the people in the Brexit Party were from the traditional left. And indeed, one of the strongest Brexiteers that I know on the left is George Galloway, who's a well-known politician in the United Kingdom. In fact, I was on his show there just a couple of nights ago. He is one of the most ardent voices for patriotic movements and independence from the EU Commission. So I think one of the lessons I learned early on was that people on the left and the right can actually come together in a true patriotic form when we can focus on that common ground and build on that. And we certainly did that in the Brexit Party. So yes, I would say patriotism is alive and well in both sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah, but Jim, you just said you didn't. There isn't a focus on what's political. Why did you say that? That's really interesting.
Well, I think my primary purpose for Freedom Train International is to unite people that are patriotic, not necessarily on the left or the right, although I would say that the vast majority of people are very much politically aligned with my own views and points of view. So I think our primary focus was to bring people together, find those common points that we can all agree on. And because there's too much division in the world, there's too many things that divide us. And I think from the conservative leaning, the Christian conservative groupings and the alliances that are forming right across Europe right now, I think that falls into line with that. And I think it's a powerful message to people that you can stand up for your country. It's not necessarily about left and right anymore. It's about right and wrong. And I think that is where we have been building such a momentum to the point now where we're actually appointing ambassadors. We have ambassadors in Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, Germany, Norway, the UK, and many in Canada. So it is really moving forward at quite a pace.
Momentum, no doubt, but also setbacks. I mean, the Romanian business is very, very disappointing for patriots. The Dutch government has just fallen, which means that there is no more patriotic elements in the Dutch government. Before we go on to that, could I come to Lionel? Lionel, thanks for joining us from New York. Just a few seconds before you came online, we were discussing the relationship between conservatism and patriotism, and I mentioned that the CPAC conference is very much the plaything of Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, who is, of course, a very enthusiastic supporter of Donald Trump. And I know Peter Lavelle wants to ask you this question, Lionel, but is Donald Trump a conservative?
First, I'm not saying this to be obstreperous. I don't know what these words mean. I've never understood what they mean. I know I'm ruining the whole thing. And I love when Mr. Ferguson says patriotic, but we're from different countries. Can a Russian and an American share patriotism, and for whom? Recently, very quickly, I had lunch, and when we ordered, a number of people were defining whether they were ovo-vegetarian, plant-based. And meanwhile, the waiter left. That's kind of what we're doing right now. I don't know what it is. To me, it's an issue-oriented thing. I voted for Donald Trump because, number one, I think he's in many respects terrific, but I have no other choice. I have a senile man who can't control, who is incontinent, yelling who ordered the veal cutlet. So there really wasn't much of a choice. That's number one. Number two, as far as the issues, what is the issue right now? And finally, I don't know the difference between my country or my government. And that changes constantly. So I'm sorry to throw a fly into the ointment immediately.
Well, let me give you one possible definition of, at least, of patriot. I can probably give you one of conservative as well. But what about anti-globalist, Lionel? What about that? Is Trump an anti-globalist?
I don't know. And I'm saying this. There is I love the man, but there's a kind of a lovable schizophrenia. I don't know if he necessarily knows what he is saying sometimes or remembers what he is saying. And I'm not sure if he's picked the right people to necessarily implement what I hope he's saying. That being said, globalism is absolutely anti-American. Mine's even more specific. I am a constitutionalist. That's our rule book. Sometimes it's hard to understand. I'm a lawyer by profession. So I would say yes, for the most part, he is, in some respects, an ardent, prototypical Fox News, low-hanging fruit conservative. But then sometimes he'll say some things, and I don't really know what label best describes him.
Marco, I mentioned you were actually at CPAC. I mentioned the Romanian fiasco, or the Romanian coup d'etat, which is probably what we should refer to it as. Yeah. I mentioned the latest news from the Netherlands. We all know, I mean, I'm sure everyone was excited to see Alice Weidel speak, but her party is excluded from government, much as the similar party in Austria has been excluded. You know, of course, we understand these jamborees are meant to, you know, get everyone energized and so on, and to boost morale and everything. But isn't the truth that the system has an awful lot of fighting power left in it, and that it's actually winning, unfortunately, quite a few victories against patriots? Marco?
Yeah, it's winning overall. The first question is it enough, and do we play the thing smart? You took, for example, in Romania. As you know, after the trial, there was also a huge Hungarian minority, and all those Hungarians in Romania, they are patriotic. But to ally them with a party like ours, who has less importance to the Hungarians in their own country, forces these patriots to vote for the left liberal alternative. And that's exactly what happened. So if our would have played the ball a little bit smarter, also with the Hungarian minority there, they could have won. And so these are internal things that are playing.
Yeah, but hang on, Marco. Hang on, Marco. Yeah. Of course, there are internal elements, but we all know that the Romanian Constitutional Court cancelled the election, and then the Electoral Commission prevented Georgescu from standing, and the European Court of Human Rights refused to hear the case, implying that there is no right to a free and fair presidential election in Europe. The system when I talk about the system, I'm talking about the system at the global level. I'm not talking about the shifting sands of voting patterns within Romania.
Exactly. That's also why I think it's good, and it was also mentioned at CPAC, that sovereignty is of huge importance, that each country decides for themselves. So also for Romania, they have to decide for themselves who they can vote for. So no external influence is needed for a country.
Yeah, well, that's the battle, really, isn't it? Because the whole point is that these various patriotic movements are struggling, yes, against internal political enemies, but also against a very substantial international system. I mean, so for instance, if you take the AfD, of course, they're threatened with being banned in Germany.
Yes.
But as our political party, the Forum for Democracy in the Netherlands, has recently established, I'm sure the other people here today with me don't know this, but yesterday, one of the members of Parliament received a written reply from the government shortly before it fell that there are indeed NATO obligations on so-called resilience obligations, which prevent elected governments from implementing a whole range of policies, even though they may have been elected on those policies. And even though they didn't know about the NATO obligations at the time before they were elected, what happened concretely in the Netherlands was that they were taken into a room by the, I think, counter-terrorism service and told that there were these obligations. And it so happens that they prevented a health policy being implemented. So this is an important thing that we've established. There really is a global government in place, or maybe more than one. Jim, is this something that you look at as well?
Well, very
Jim
much
Ferguson,
so. I'm very focused. Yes, and indeed, I'm very focused on this whole global governance, and there are many different entities within the globalist movement, many organisations that are very ancient. But the thing is, whilst I'm not against international partnership, we do it all the time. I think what we're concerned about is the attacks on democracy. And I was in Romania. I was there campaigning on behalf of the presidential candidate George Simeon and his team. I spoke to many people on the ground, in the streets, in the rural areas, of course, in the campaign itself. But what was remarkable was how the first round of voting went so much in his favour. I think it was about 40.8% of the vote. And then it just completely overturned. We know that France was playing a part in this. There was a huge disinformation fear campaign that was launched against George Simeon. And in my opinion, the election was effectively stolen. And those are strong words, but I saw it.
Well, Jim, George and I have talked about this a lot. George, you're really good with numbers, okay? It's impossible. The official outcome is just simply impossible. George, you know it.
No, it was impossible because when you did the numbers, that means that of those who voted in the second round, but who didn't vote in the first round, of those, 75% went for Dan, and only something like 25 then went for Simeon. That's just impossible. It's an impossibility that these people, they didn't take the opportunity to vote in the first round, then they vote in the second round, and 75%. So 3 out of every 4 voters who took part in the second round but didn't in the first round went for Simeon. It's just mathematically impossible. It cannot be like that. So I think, look, I mean, if you have a system that, first of all, cancels an election on the day that the second round of the voting had already begun, and that in December, if you have a system that then tells the leading candidate, the candidate who's winning, who's leading in the polls, you can't run. That's it. You can't run. And then the courts, yep, he can't run. Why wouldn't they steal an election? Why wouldn't they steal and cheat in an election? And they pulled it off. And they were, celebrating because they pulled it off. They pulled off the scam that of this fraudulent election. I mean, they saw what happened in the United States in 2020. It's not that hard to pull off, but they did it. I mean, if you can do all of that, all the things that we know that they did, with Georgescu. But of course, that's what they did in the second round against Simeon.
Lionel, I mentioned these NATO obligations. We in Europe live under this supranational government. We're aware of it, of course, in the European Union. We're perhaps less aware of it where NATO is concerned. I was very struck this weekend by something Lindsey Graham said, Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina in Kiev. He said, he recalled the famous exchange in the Oval Office with Zelensky when Trump said, "You don't have any cards," and Lindsey Graham said, addressing the Ukrainians, he said, "You've got to understand that there's not just one man who holds cards in America. There are three branches of government," and then proceeded to explain that the Senate was about to initiate its own sanctions program. Is the challenge for Trump people like Lindsey Graham and what we perhaps lazily call the deep state? In other words, is it an internal deep state rather than a supranational one as we have in Europe? Lionel?
Absolutely. We have our own Steve Bannon, whatever role he maintains, said that Lindsey Graham should be arrested.
Yes.
So I think let's start with that part. I am going to say things, and I'm sure you know this already, but there is a schizophrenic incoherence when it comes to what Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal and others are. They talk about a 1950s Joe McCarthy, Khrushchev Russia, a Boris and Natasha Russophobic dystopia that doesn't exist. And when you want to go for the counter to that in American news media sources, there is none. And the surefire indication that we've got real problems is when CNN and Fox News are in agreement. And I am this lone voice saying, wait a minute, does anybody understand? And I ask, just for example, does he want possible nuclear war? And they look at me like, what are you talking about? And it shows a detachment because, as you know, in the United States, many citizens have this American exceptionalism and they feel that they are bulletproof. Then nothing happens. That's all theoretical. So Lindsey Graham, I don't understand. Are they neocons? Are they war profiteers? Are they NATO apologists? I have no idea. Ask somebody what NATO does. Ask them what they do. And some people, believe it or not, think it's a branch of the American. Maybe it is. And I always tell people, remember the motto of NATO should be no Russia, no NATO. It's a coexistence. If we have no fear, what are we doing here? I mean, it's, again, I'm sorry.
My point is that he is clearly fighting back. You know, all these people were very shocked when Trump got re-elected. They hoped it wouldn't happen. They probably didn't prepare for it. And they seem to have gone into a state of shock for a couple of months. But they're regrouping. You know where he went after Kiev? Guess what? He went to Brussels and he had a big love-in with Ursula von der Leyen.
He was in Istanbul. He was in Istanbul.
He's like Padre Pio. He can be in several different places at the same time.
By location. But the other day, remember when we had this issue, they said when President Trump, and again, bless his heart, and I say that using the Southern affectation, when he came on and said, I don't know what the hell's wrong with Putin. What is he crazy? Excuse me. Are you aware of these 700 or 1,000 drones, especially the one that attacked his helicopter? Oh, and even Marco Rubio was, I'm thinking, who's doing the briefing here? And then that changed. So again, I'm wondering, it's not that he's not in charge. Who's running the show? Who's actually moving the strings?
Indeed.
But does he know what's going on?
Indeed, that's right. And of course, the denial about the drone attack was maybe true in the sense that maybe they didn't know that the drones were coming. But
which Jim, is worse.
Of course. But Jim, do you think there's a European Union, American deep state alliance against Trump?
Oh, undoubtedly. Absolutely agree with what Lionel was saying there. There most definitely is. And it's not just an interstate or interglobal movement. That it exists within the American side as well. And they are working in partnership together. I mean, Lindsey Graham, in my opinion, is just absolutely one of the most worst human beings alive. He is constantly pushing war. And I've seen him, I studied the whole Donetsk, Luhansk, Ukraine situation as it unfolded way back in 2014. I saw exactly what was going on there. And he was there, Senator John McCain was there, Victoria Nuland was there. These are warmongers. I'll be honest, gentlemen, I'm sure you would agree with this. I don't think we've ever been closer to a full-scale nuclear war than we are right now. God forbid this goes ahead. We've got to do everything in our power to.
American media, Lionel was right. From Fox News to CNN to MSNBC, they're giddy. They're giddy about it. Read the headlines on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. But is common sense completely flown out of the window? Look, at the end of the day, we can go back and forth about the whole situation about Ukraine and Russia and doing the invasion and all of the rest of it. But there were serious provocations. And let's not forget the Minsk agreements, which it turned out were a complete fraud. They only did it to give Ukraine time to rearm. That was admitted by Merkel. It was admitted by Hollande. It was admitted by a number of people. When you're operating at that level on the international stage and you make those types of agreements, it's the same in business, but even more so at that high political level, and then you're found out to be telling lies, of course the other side isn't going to trust you. So I very much hope that Trump and Vladimir Putin can get this sorted out. But Zelensky is the biggest problem of all. He has been propped up by European elites, and they are pushing for war. They want Russia's mineral wealth. They're jealous of what they have there. And this isn't going to stop until something fairly significant takes place. People have got to realize we have never been as close to nuclear war as we are now.
But that's exactly why I say the system is so powerful. There are these huge interests involved, the military-industrial complex, the minerals, etc., people's careers. The whole European Union existentially now has hitched its colors to the anti-Russian flag because it's making Russia the enemy in order to reinforce its internal cohesion. And in their minds, patriots, let's keep our focus on patriotism or conservatism, patriots are Russian agents. So there's a complete dovetailing between the hostility and the aggression against patriotic elements, the ruling against Marine Le Pen, the Georgescu thing, the threat of banning the AfD, etc. There is an absolute dovetailing between that and the overall foreign policy, which, as you say, Jim, is backed up by other interests.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I have to say that what we witnessed at CPAC, the age of patriots, this is what we need. We need a unified alliance across the entire European continent. We need to make sure that our voices, the patriotic voices, the conservative voices, the Christian voices, are becoming more and more powerful, and that we don't allow our world to be destroyed by these people with self-interests, self-enriching agendas. And unfortunately, in the United Kingdom, one of the worst prime ministers, I think, in our living memory, Keir Starmer, is now actively talking about a coalition of the willing, 10,000 boots on the ground in Ukraine. And our army commanders, I'm connected to them. They have told me, they've told people I know categorically that there is no mission, there is no exit strategy. There is no way to protect them against Russian missiles. I don't want to see British soldiers put in harm's way. And for what? A globalist agenda, a globalist war? We can't even secure our own borders here in the United Kingdom. How can we secure Ukraine's?
Well, Jim and Marco and also Lionel here. Before we started, Jim, you were talking about using the theme of patriotism, which can attract the traditional. Lionel and I have been over this ground a million times, but they can go beyond the traditional left-right paradigm, which is actually, it holds us all prisoner by people constantly invoking it because it's to alienate half the population. Which I can remember when Jimmy Dore and Tucker Carlson were before Tucker went on his own. He went on. Jimmy Dore was on Fox News. Okay. And he gave his spiel. I mean, I'm sure he practiced it because it was like exactly 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Okay. That's one of the reasons why Tucker got fired. But, I've been on Jimmy's a couple of times, and And he knows I'm the bow tie conservative guy. He loves having me on. I love talking to him. And I think that is maybe conservatism alienates people. I guess when we label it, it's scary for some people. Okay. But if you don't label it and you start talking, it's so remarkable how much we agree on things.
Yes.
Well, I would just come in very quickly before I hand it back. Absolutely loved Jimmy Dore. And, he was always on the traditional left. But as I said before, maybe Lionel and some of the others came in, I was on with George Galloway, who is most definitely not a conservative. He is traditional left-leaning. But I agree with probably about 80% of his points of view, not everything, obviously. And the same with Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore and I follow each other and have done for a long time on X. And when you listen to Jimmy Dore, I remember when I started to listen to him, it was like, he doesn't sound like a lefty to me. He sounds like one of us. And that's the whole thing. They use the division of left and right. But in actual fact, patriots exist on the left and the right.
True. This was also visible. This was also visible at CPAC. You mentioned it, John, with Fico. He was there, and he mentioned it that although he's leftist, he approves the marriage between man and female. So he's anti-woke, and these are the topics that patriotism or at CPAC were very important, like protect your sovereignty, no joint debts for European countries, stop the woke. It was very known. I already mentioned sovereignty, but also peace in Ukraine. So all these things are not totally left or right, but these are the things that patriots unite. And I think we should make that bigger and bigger. Protect your own country, protect your own culture, your own Christian values. And it doesn't matter which country you're from. And actually, it doesn't matter if you're conservative or not. But if you're a patriot and if you love your country, there is no other option. And we need to buckle up, because what you said, there is a connection between Europe and US, like deep state. And we need to be the answer. So the age of patriots are here. We have to grow, and we have to grow faster.
Lionel, you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Oh no, we had again. I feel like I'm a Quisling or some Benedict Arnold here. But in my country here, we have not left and right. It's pro-Trump, anti-Trump. TDS is the official party position of the Democratic Party. They have no idea. If you said, for $1,000 and a new car, what is your worldview, Mr. Democrat, Mr. Progressive? And it'll be a little bit about maybe immigration or something, but it always swings back to Trump. If Trump is that file that you inadvertently deleted, and the entire operating system is now worthless. You didn't realize it was based on this one little file. And America, and by the way, the right wing, again, here I am doing this. I always tell these Republicans, who I don't even know are more stupid, the Republicans or the Democrats, but I'm saying the people who voted in the last election didn't vote for you. They voted for Trump. There is no Republican Party. And I'm telling people right now, as we speak, gentlemen, President Trump has so far accumulated, ready for this, 9% of his term. 9%, 130 days. It seems like he's been there for years. He is this bedrock. When he removes himself from the discussion, there will be no discussion anymore. So right now, going back to what you talked about, war, I suggested the other day, I said, one of these days we're going to wake up. And we have now entered up into this new AI kind of AGI drone warfare. And you're going to see a false flag operation over Lafayette Park in Washington. And you're going to have somebody claim to be some Russian separatist. By the way, Russian means you either have a Russian last name, you've been to Russia, or you don't even have to be a part of the Russian government. But somebody aligned with Russia will be mimicking this, or Ukraine, or somebody. And you won't have the smarts to figure out what's happening. We're in a whole new warfare. You don't need F-35s anymore. This was a wake-up call. And when you bring up false flags, the use of the media to propel a particular platform or vortex of ideas, you're a conspiracy theorist, which is another one. And by the way, what you gentlemen are talking about in my country, you're an election denier. And I remember from the days of 9/11, I was called a truther. I'm saying, goddamn right, I'm a truther. We use words. Think about this. We will take what you are saying. So again, I'm in the day room of Creedmoor, which is a big psychiatric facility. I'm walking around and I'm trying to figure out. I talk to you, gentlemen. I think this is terrific. I hang up from our conversation and I realize I can't mimic or replicate this in my country. It only exists here. And I hate to say this, but there's I'm going to say this, either a European or an international flavor that I so appreciate that I don't get here. Do you know that what we're talking about on Fox News most of the time is auto pens? You're still talking about Joe Biden and some lunatic in Boulder, Colorado. Low-hanging fruit, a lot of B-roll, and projecting the illusion that this is substance. It's like this junk food that fills you up. That's sawdust.
Lionel,
But could I just add to that? Or no, I was just going to say that the problem is that I think the fate of the populist patriotic movement in Europe or globally really depends on Trump, how Trump fares in this administration, because he really is the titular leader of the populist patriotic movement around the world. Yeah. If he fails, then I think all populists and patriots will fail, and I don't think I have any real serious electoral prospects. And that's why I think what's happening now in Ukraine is so dangerous, because we had these. First of all, we had this apparent assassination attempt on Putin. Trump didn't seem to know about it, and then didn't seem to have anything to add to that. And now we had this attack on these airfields, on these strategic bombers. Trump so far, so this is Wednesday, this happened on Sunday, so far has said nothing. He was shooting his mouth off all of last week about Putin. Oh, Putin, he's attacking Kiev. What do you care about Kiev? I mean, why are you getting worked up about the attacks on Kiev? And yet here, which clearly involves the United States, he says nothing. And the foreign policy, we talked about Lindsey Graham a moment ago. Suddenly, he's not really running U.S. foreign policy. It's been ceded to Lindsey Graham, Ursula von der Leyen, and the Europeans. And the Europeans are cackling with glee because they think that they've basically seen off bad Trump. They were worried 3 months ago that they had Trump to deal with. They didn't know how to deal with him. Now they're kind of really giddy with delight. Hey, we can do this. We can go on, waging our war. Trump isn't going to be a problem for us. If this goes on, I think that all patriots and populists are going to suffer. I mean, it's really everything depends on the success or otherwise of the Trump administration.
George, do they not realize that if Mr. Putin were to say, I always throw this one in. I said, if there is a nuclear, I can't believe I'm even saying this, but if there is a nuclear interchange or something, it's not going to be Hiroshima. It might be kind of a tactical. I love when we say this. Tactical, kind of a low yield, kind of you're kind of a portable, like a sidearm of. And I'm saying, I can't believe we're saying this. And the best part about these NATO folks is, hey, I'm in New York. You're next door. What are you laughing about? And I've got to say this one part. I heard
they think Trump is they think Putin is bluffing, just like the media now have this moniker. Oh, Taco, Trump always chickens out. They think Putin always chickens out as well. They don't think it's serious.
That was another thing I read, and perhaps you gentlemen can correct me, that the reason they were laughing, they said, look how they have this critical air fleet parked next to each other, similar to our Pearl Harbor, and someone said, but that's the condition. That's part of the treaty. That's the way they have to be configured. That's the way you have. We're not sloppy. And people said, oh, does anybody know what they're talking about? I mean, I'm wondering, I don't know what the problem is. Is it nescience, ignorance, deliberate refusal to accept the truth? And again, we're not talking about.
Well, I mean, but Lionel, it boils down to, and this is the state of the world in 2025, is that we're willing, these people we're talking about, they're willing to blow up the world to give Donald Trump a loss. I mean, really?
But
really?
That's also
what we are?
That's also
It's
what
like
we have
you're
seen.
yelling.
Sorry.
You're hoping, you hate the pilot of your plane. You hope he crashes while you're on it, so he'll have a demerit on his record. You're actually you're hoping the captain of the Titanic sinks because you hate him so much. I mean, really, this sounds almost childish, but that's precisely what we're doing. And I think, John, you're absolutely correct. Or I'm sorry, Jim, or someone. Trump does not recognize the fact that he is. What is he? Is he the modern day? Is he Caesar? I mean, what does he? Can you believe this? And the best part is, who made him this? The Democrats, not the Republicans. They do it because secretly they love him. It's this toxic, violent, codependent relationship. It's like this awful, fatal attraction. They don't realize that they need him. I don't want to get into the Freudian aspect.
Germ, you wanted to say something. I've got something to say, but go ahead, Germ.
I've got a book behind me written by Andrew Breitbart, and it was only written slightly more than 10 years ago. And I feel like those are the good old days, you know, when there were the Republicans, Democrats, and he spoke about the Tea Party. Now, there's a term that we don't hear anymore. Has Trump completely destroyed that, or is there still an opportunity for something like the Tea Party?
Jim, we need your answer.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, you know, I modeled Freedom Train International on the Tea Party movement because it was incredibly successful and it united people together. It is possible that Freedom Train International will become more politically aligned. I mean, we are already politically aligned, if I want to be honest, but we are. I wanted to build something that would be there for everybody, that were moderate. You know, whether you're in the center, whether you're right of center, left of center, not the extremes, because that's where the real movement is building. And we are very keen to showcase and to promote those voices of reason and logic, not this hysteria that we see on the far left side. I was listening intently to what you all are saying, and it's amazing to get that perspective from the American side as well, because we do value, and we love our American friends and allies across the pond. We are looking to President Trump for that leadership. There are many, actually, when they talked about Canada, annexing Canada, becoming the 51st state, I could tell you there were many, many people in many other countries that said, hey, we'll be 52. That there is a real appreciation. I also say with a degree of caution, because there are very respected patriots in Canada that wouldn't want that. They love their country. So it's a sensitive subject. But watch Alberta closely, watch Saskatchewan closely. But certainly, the Tea Party movement, as from what I can see, isn't as maybe vocal as it used to be, which is a shame because it was highly effective. And I would hope there would be still support for it. Whether Freedom Train International gets into the states in any kind of meaningful way is that we'll wait and see. But the point is this: we are building up a huge headway. We are making significant progress. We only launched in February 2024, and I think it surprised me, it surprised a lot of other people, just how quickly it has grown. But one thing is clear: unity is strength, and that is something that we've got to build together.
But isn't extreme actually a good thing? We touched on this, I think, a week ago or two, because what does it really mean? It's relative. I mean, it's never you who's extreme, it's always the other person. Isn't it just another way of saying being principled?
What does extreme mean? Extreme wealth, extreme health, extreme beauty, extreme breed. I mean, I think extreme is one of these great things. By the way, Jim, we don't have the Tea Party anymore. It's called MAGA. That's what this thing is. Tea Party, I don't know what that means. It's this, and it's tough when you're saying, make America. I'm not in America. But his idea, do you know, let me tell you what Trump does. This is his genius. And this is something you should do if ever you're trying to negotiate something, let's say a salary. You go in there and you say, now, Peter, I understand you're talking about perhaps we're going to be re-upping your contract. Yes, I want a limousine. No, I want a fleet of limousines. I want 12 secretaries, and I want my own office building. Oh, and I want a raise. And they'll say, wait a minute, hold it. That's crazy. Okay, forget the first part. Just give me the raise. And that's what Trump does. He goes in with these things. He'll say something like, what can I do to piss these people? I know. The Gulf of America. That's stupid. Precisely. And he goes in and they go nuts. And he says,
That's true.
let's say Canada, 51st state. Same thing with Mexico. Now, the thing is, sometimes that's great, but then he forgets, and I think they're kind of on to it. We have a fellow here named Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy was the anti-vaxxer. Come on, Bobby, go. He's going to go in there and you're going to autism. And all of a sudden he went from that to, I think we should remove the dye in Fruit Loops. It's like, wait a minute, what happened? So we're seeing this constant changing of things. I know you don't perhaps care about this, but we were going to get to the bottom of the Epstein case. That's kind of been forgotten. And we're going to get to the bottom of the JFK files and who killed him. That's forgotten. And UFOs.
But Lionel, it is very, very important. I mean, I'm not interested in the sordid parts of those stories at all.
Oh, yes, you are. Don't kid me.
But it's about transparency. And I think that's one of the things that
right.
I think Jim would agree with me is that, sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. And if you're going to look, I mean, who trusts authority anymore? Okay. And, and COVID was that incident. I mean, and it was intentionally done. Okay. And it keeps, we're sane people. I'm really enjoying this, but, the more schizophrenic you make people, the more easier it is to control them. Okay. And so there's always going to be these questions about, did Epstein kill himself or not? I mean, Dan Bongino and who was the other one, Lionel?
Kash Patel.
Okay. I mean, again, it's not my favorite story. Okay. But if you're going to hang your hat on, we're going to get to the bottom of it and get transparency. That's what's most important.
Well,
okay?
It's interesting.
Okay. It's an easy one to pin them down on. Okay.
America, by the way, if there is an allegation of some Russian dissident getting poisoned, America cares more about that than a person who was in federal custody. But this is the person who held the linchpin to a level of corruption and blackmail and extortion, who was murdered. The forensic evidence is overwhelming. And they said, oh, yeah. And you had Dan Bongino, for example. He is the assistant head of the FBI. Why they put two competitors next to each other, it's like hiring your ex-wife. It's like, what are you doing? Anyway, during his podcast career, he said, they went and they killed this man. All of a sudden, he said, we're kind of looking at this, and I just don't think there's any evidence of this. And they said, wait a minute. What are you doing? Who is this? And instead of just going away, he says, oh, I'm not done yet. He said, coming up, I'm going to be releasing the videos. He said, but you told us there are no videos. And so we're used to this. It's like learned helplessness. It's the abused spouse syndrome. We're used to be completely hopes up, disappointment, hopes up, disappointment, always unsure. As soon as we can land on a subject, the subject changes. That's where we are right now. And I'll stop talking. The number one issue.
Stop talking, because that's very interesting. You're just saying, you're talking about Trump, America under Trump. Yes. Hopes up and dashed. Yes. That's where we are.
And the number one issue, I could go into any country, any place, anywhere. I could just say one thing. Hello, I'm running for your prime minister, president. And if you think that men and women are different, vote for me. I'm in. That is the singular, crazy, simple issue.
Well, no, Lionel, because then there'll be some election committee and they'll say, well, you didn't pay your taxes, or you're in the bay of a foreign government, and then you're on. Jim, there's a really important thing I'd like to ask you. When watching the Trump administration proceed, I'm very, and I want Lionel, because he's a constitutionalist here, I'm worried about habeas corpus. I'm worried about the rule of law. And and George and I have our podcast. We discuss this at great length. I'm very worried as conservatives. This is the kind of the bedrock. I know America is slightly different than everyone else because, the Constitution means a lot to me, okay? Because it's the foundation. That's where we have our conversation. That's the level playing field, okay? We can talk about it, we can argue about it, but we know what we're talking. We have that specific text and even ethos, I would say. is that an element forward to appeal to that? Because so many decisions are just made, particularly you guys in Europe. I mean, somebody decided over there that we have to do this here. Okay, that's a real problem in Europe. I've said many, many times, and I think even on this podcast, is if you take the prime minister from Estonia and replace it with the French prime minister, nobody would notice.
Yeah, I remember when you were speaking there, when I was in the States, not the last time I was in Washington, D.C., but before that I was on tour across 8 different states. And on one of them, I think it was North Dakota, I was asked to lead the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. They did it as a little bit of a joke for me, but actually I did. And there was a big audience there. And I'm not an American, but I could detect that. There was an emotion to that. And I have to be honest with you, I felt that. I think when you talk about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, these are enshrined in the psyche of American people. But we that are not Americans applaud you for it, because, that is something that is worth having. We in the UK have the Magna Carta. Similar enshrined methods of freedom of speech, freedom of thought. That is under attack. I can tell you that our journalists being locked up. I'm sure you already know this. That our Christians being arrested in the streets, taken away by police officers in handcuffs, even for praying silently in their minds. You couldn't make it up. If you went back 20, 30 years ago and somebody would tell you that this is what was going to be, you wouldn't have believed it. So yes, I take the point that you're making. I think there is a real danger to this. If people believe their voices are no longer being heard, if they feel that their vote is no longer valid, simply because the elites in whatever country it is decide they don't like that political candidate, well, then what is left? What is the solution? If you can't resolve these things politically, then what else are people left to do? And there was a very recent report that came out to one of our government ministers in the United Kingdom, warning that the UK was moving very, very close, much closer than it had been in decades, to potential civil war. That was the terminology used. It was civil disobedience. It wasn't civil disturbances, civil war. And as we see the unprecedented levels of mass illegal immigration, thank God it stopped at the US southern border. Good on Trump for that. But it's not happened. It's not stopped here in the UK. In fact, if anything, it is accelerating. And it's accelerating in France, in Germany, in Sweden. Sweden is now the rape capital of Europe. So these are things that people are witnessing. When people feel they've been sold out by the political class, that's where the real danger comes in. I think there is. I think you're absolutely right. There is a danger to all of this that we have to be very cognizant of and observing of.
Well,
but Lionel, are you
Jim,
saying that the political class... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, Jim, just to add to what you're saying, have a look at what we're doing here in South Africa and do not copy it, because you will be there in 20 years' time.
Yeah, I'm watching closely.
Were you saying earlier, Lionel, that the political class, including Trump, is selling us out?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of things. Oh, and by the way, just South Africa, let me tell you what they hear this. They say, white people, white people, the word genocide. I said, wait a minute, hold it. I said, don't you folks see what's going on here a little bit? First of all, yes, genocide in Africa, ICC, ICJ, genocide. If I didn't know better, because I'm always thinking there's an angle to everything, and nothing is what it appears. But people in the United States would say, what are they talking about? This is Fox News comes along. White people are thrown out by black people. Got it. And all of a sudden we love it, because the number one issue in our country we love more than anything else is race. Try to bring that into just tell people it's not that we have illegal, immigrants, we have illegal folks, and we're going to be like South Africa. Do you know that's all we talked about? Let me just go one step further, which is another problem we have in our country. I'm sorry to say. And this bothers me the most. I think I'm frozen here. Let me see if I can fix this. We have in this country this idea, and I don't want to get into this subject, please, gentlemen, I don't. But for the first time, we need to give you a label. If you say certain things, used to be un-American, then you were something else, but now you're anti-Semitic. If you say the wrong, this subject matter. It doesn't matter whether you are or aren't. If I say, you know, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not so sure about this election. You're an election denier, and you can be actually removed from platforms. If I say, excuse me, I'd like to have my vaccines tested before, you're an anti-vaxxer. And then what they did was the government by proxy would use the social media platforms that you've come to love and will threaten those by proxy. So it is, and because the idea is that the First Amendment applies to the government, not private. So what we have is we are not only under attack by the courts, but we have not the thought police, but the thought vigilantes, private citizens that will come after us and label us something that we're not, if what we say happens to fall into a category that other people disapprove of. So it's this mob mentality that's even more frightening. I fear my citizens more than I do my government, if you can believe that.
Jim, Lionel a moment ago referred to Fox News and CNN agreeing. I've trying to play the pessimist in this hour. I think that the deep state has a lot of life left in it, unfortunately, and part of this is the media. Now, you've mentioned Britain, Jim. Lots of people are looking at what's happening in Britain with great dismay. And you've referred to Starmer and his warmongering. My impression is that that's just fine as far as the British media is concerned.
Oh, the British media.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The British media are absolutely complicit. The BBC, Sky News. I mean, GB News in the UK is one of the better ones. They actually do report, and they are very popular because of it. Look, I go on Fox News from time to time. I was on there quite recently on The Bottom Line. It tends to be if they want a British perspective, they'll invite me on and they'll talk about whatever issues it might be. It could be about France. It could be about farming or the protests. It could be about a number of different things. And I think that when you start to see the corporate media, the legacy media starting to agree with each other, that has all the hallmarks of a psychological operation. I'm reminded when the pandemic hit, when you had all these globalist media groups all coming out with the same narrative, indeed, all along with the prime ministers and the presidents and the different people and the national leaders, all at the same time. We all remember Build Back Better. It was so bizarre. So that has the hallmarks of a psychological operation. And I think one of the biggest experts on that is actually General Mike Flynn. He's a great guy. He understands what he terms the fifth generational warfare that we're all being subjected to. We have to understand there is huge manipulation going on by the deep state, whatever you want to call them, the cabal, whatever. But the point is they are real. And that's why they're coming up. I mean, not the last Davos meeting, but the one just before it. Their primary focus wasn't on curing cancer or hunger or stopping war. Their primary focus at the World Economic Forum meeting was on disinformation and misinformation. In other words, they don't like us meeting like this, talking about the things they don't want us to talk about. And so to try to sort of give that into context, what we're doing here, what CPAC Hungary was doing, the alliances that are forming across Europe, these are powerful counters to the globalist menace. And I have to be honest, I've often said, I believe there is a war on humanity. And for whatever reason, they don't like us very much. And it's all about control. They're obsessed with it. Let's not forget about Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They all sound very nice on the surface. When you peel it back and you look at the methods to get to that, it's utterly horrific.
There's also, gentlemen, there's also, Tolstoy said, one of my favorite expressions is history would be a wonderful thing if only it were true. So what we do too is now that we not only have disinformation and misinformation and doubt information, we now have something which I don't know if you have this, we had something in our country have CRT, critical race theory, and the 1619 Project, which basically came along and said that America is a slave country and they just made things up and then used that as a source of argument. Then we had this thing called DEI and ESG and MOUSZ. And we had this notion where we don't want equality, we want equity. We want a final result to be our goal, not, all right, let's start from square one, which would really kill sports and that sort of thing. So we're still arguing about that. Then we have within the Democratic Party fractures and divisions with various groups within this. And by the way, I hope what the Republicans, if they're smart enough, they will go after and support people like Ocasio-Cortez and other people who are basically beyond lunacy. So as this happens right now, we are on so many fronts: family, gender. We have kids who can't read because they were born in captivity and they've had devices where they can't learn to track. There are people who've never thrown a ball. There are people who've never had geography. I love this. I used to carry this in my bag and say, here, find Ukraine. Take all the time in the world. Where is it? Which side? This side? Or you may laugh at this because you have passports. In my country, what, 4% travel? They don't know. We don't know anything. We're exceptional. So you have all of these people going after everything that matters. Tradition. If I went to each of your countries, I want you to say, take me to what it's like to be Russian or Irish or South African. I want to know what your cuisine is. Show me accents. Show me your culture, your dress.
No, most people will go to McDonald's.
Well,
Yeah, you make a joke, but it's true that this is exactly the example of globalism. That
yes.
Because we don't have the money anymore. McDonald's is cheap. Everybody goes there. What Lionel was saying, I have something in my stomach. I can go make it through the night. And then the next day appears. But in the end, what Lionel is saying, we have our traditions. We, as the Dutch, we are the water managers. We, and the German, they were the car makers. But also like cuisine, we have so many different, we are so rich in Europe. And this is in threat, that we lose all this richness to the SDG, the WEF. And this is what we need to preserve. This is our root. And if you cut off roots, the tree is going to die.
And what happens is, look at your country. As soon as I say, I love heterogeneity, which is fine, but there's a certain time where I want authenticity. I want your heritage. I want, what does it mean? Like, what is it? I always tell people, if you go to somebody's country, pick a neighborhood and say, show me a week of what it looks like. What do you do for fun? Take me to your pub. Let me see your family structure. Please don't lose it. Marine Le Pen one time said, when they asked her, I love this. They said, what do you think about the burkini? Somebody who did this weird portmanteau, they took the burqa and the bikini. I don't even know how you did this. Fused them together, and women are walking around. And Marine Le Pen said, no, that's not French. And they said, how dare you? And I said, oh my God. She basically, first of all, she said, no, that's not our tradition. That's not a French thing. And they said, what does being French have to do with it? And that was, I know it may seem insignificant to you, but I ask people, what does American mean? And Peter, you would know this. What does it mean to be an American? I don't. What is it? Do we have a country? We don't even have, listen, we're losing our language. You have no idea how, I don't even know what the hell people are talking about. I guarantee you, in your country, you speak better English than we do here. And whenever we trace them, we have a woman the other day, and I'm sorry, I hope nobody takes offense to this. There was a woman, it was a congresswoman who was speaking, and people said, what the hell is she talking about? They said, excuse me, that's AAVE, African American version of English or something. I said, what? And as soon as we're losing not accents, communication. There are people. Do you know that there are kids in our country who are amazed by this show on cable called Friends, because they've never had friends before, because after COVID, there are people who are, The Sopranos in our country is bigger now because people are saying, did they say this? The N-word? Violence? It's like, where have you been? People are liking vinyl, rock music, the 70s, dancing, dating. There are American kids who don't even know what a love letter is. They've never courted. I don't even know where to start. It's at the political level, the interpersonal level, the faith level. And
Lionel, it's all by design.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is not.
Could I wrap up, because we like to stick to the hour, but I want to wrap up, and it's cheating slightly, because I want to wrap up with a question to Jim Ferguson. It may be a too big a question or too big an issue to open up right at the end. But Jim, you said if people don't trust their politicians, what else can they do? Well, there are other things that people can do, which in my view are essential for political change, and that is to build parallel societies, including economic structures, definitely cultural structures, intellectual ones like what we're doing now. What role do you think culture and economics, business can play in all this? Because after all, money talks in the end.
It does. With the advent of central bank digital currencies being discussed now openly by Ursula von der Leyen, Madame Lagarde, the IMF, etc., rollout is scheduled for October this year. We've been increasingly advising our members in Freedom to International, grow your own food, buy gold and silver, a little bit, but get food stocks, get prepared, because we don't know what's coming. And if we've seen this horrific war potentially unfolding, look, I don't think people realize the impacts on food and supply and distribution. I am very much of the opinion that people should have a little bit put aside, because something is better than nothing. And the grassroots levels, get to know the people in your community. I mean, going back to what Lionel was saying, it was marvelous what he was saying. We are losing the ability to communicate with each other. Get to know your neighbours. Reach out to them and check they're okay. This is what community used to be. And nowadays, you can live next door to somebody in London for 25 years and never, ever speak to them. This is a reality. So what I think we must do as human beings is connect at the human level once again. And yes, we all have devices. Yes, I'm as guilty as everybody else. I'm on my phone all the time. But we must always try to build those kind of links to each other and be prepared. And if necessary, if the system was to crash, there are people I talk to that believe it could. We must have some kind of fallback measure. And Freedom to International has a wealth of information. We've got books and books and many articles about where do you start. If you don't even know what to do, that's okay. We can take you right from that first point right to the advanced levels, where we're actually teaching you how to buy farmland, how to build communities, and how to do all of that. So that's advanced stuff, but we take people right the way through it. We don't know what the future holds, but if it continues to go unchallenged the way it is, then it's not good. But I'll go back to the point that was made about the sunlight earlier on, and I'll end with this. It's always darkest just before the dawn, and as the world gets darker, we get brighter.
Well, let's hope you're
Don't
right.
forget the Benedict option, everybody.
The Benedict option. Very good.
And
Well,
also,
Jim,
the light at the end of the tunnel could be the light of an oncoming train or a gorilla with a flashlight. Remember that.
Okay, you can take the pessimistic message or the optimistic one as you like. Jim Ferguson, Lionel in New York, Marco in The Hague, George in Budapest, Jerm in Cape Town, Peter in Moscow, me in Paris. Thanks a lot for watching, and thank you for joining us, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.